Hello everyone, welcome to our channel, Rebecca Stew and the crew. I'm Rebecca and today we have some Dollar Tree DIY projects for y'all. So let's get started going over our supplies today. We'll need a foam pumpkin from Dollar Tree as well as some yarn. Chunkier yarn tends to work better here. We'll need some raffia as well. And then to decorate, we will need some leaves, something to use as a stem, and berries. We'll also need scissors and hot glue. So let's get crafty. The first thing we're going to do is figure out how long we need our yarn to be. It's really personal preference. Do you want your yarn to wrap all the way around your pumpkin with the braid? Or do you want to do smaller strips where you start in the middle and end in the middle at the bottom and do one at a time? It's really up to you. I'm going to wrap mine all the way around for most of these. So I chose to wrap my yarn around the pumpkin about twice or 1.5 times. And then I use that first piece as my guide to cut the rest. And we will need these in groups of 6. Each braid will have 6 strands of yarn. And it really depends on how you do your braids, how tight you braid them. And just, are you going to want to wrap it all the way around or do the smaller pieces? That will depend how many of these groups you'll have to cut. So once I have a few groups cut, I'm going to tie them together at the top with a knot. And then we will end up taping this to the table. It'll just make it more easy when we want to braid. But I am taking those strands of yarn and separating them into groups of 2. I have 2 on the right, 2 on the left, and 2 in the middle. And then we're going to start our braid. So to braid, all you do is you work with the yarn on the ends and you bring those to the center. So we'll start on one side and we'll bring 2 strands to the middle, then go to the opposite side, 2 strands to the middle, go back to the other side, 2 strands to the middle, and you just keep repeating this process. Now, if you notice, I do keep adjusting the yarn to make sure it's laying flat. I don't want this to end up looking like a rope. I want it to look like a flat braided sweater, like you would see like on a sweater. So that's why I am making sure that I'm adjusting those pieces of yarn so that they're laying nice and flat and they're all the way up at the top. I don't pull too tight. I just don't want a bunch of spaces between the braid. Then what I do is I take my scissors and cut off the excess at the top. We'll use some hot glue and start right in the center where the old stem used to be. And then I'm checking to see how far this is actually going to wrap around the pumpkin now that it's braided, because when you braid it, it does get shorter. And we're just going to put this on with some hot glue. If you have a low temperature glue gun or one that you can adjust the temperature, that would be best for this just because we're gluing it to foam. As you can see, we have our first strand on all the way around. And then we'll start working on our second one. We're kind of doing an X pattern or a plus pattern. I just add a little bit of glue at a time. I don't do all of the glue all the way around. I just want to do a little bit at a time so that way I have time to adjust it and hold the yarn in place where I want it to be. Once I get to the middle, I've got this excess. I can continue to wrap it around the pumpkin or I can cut it off. So I chose to keep going. So I'm going to go in the center of these 2 strands and keep pulling it down. Then I had to fix the braid a little bit. It started to come undone on the end. And then I just glue that to the middle. And then we'll cut off the excess strands that are a little bit too long. And now we have our next strand and we just keep working in the same manner. We'll start in between the different pieces. Now I didn't want it to get so chunky at the bottom that it wouldn't stand up. So once I put a few pieces on, I start changing the way that I apply the strands or the braids to the pumpkin. On the top, I didn't really care that much how much it was layered. It lays pretty flat, especially if you made sure that the braids were flat. But I made sure that I would stop the strand right at the bottom so I wouldn't have to layer it. And we've almost got the pumpkin done at this point. You can see I go all the way to the bottom. And then I chose to go ahead and cut this one off and start a new strand. And I just made sure that the ends were glued down. So that piece I just cut to make sure it didn't come unbraided. I'm just going to add a little bit of hot glue to the end of it. And that will be my new strand that I start. So once you've got it on like this, kind of like in a flower pattern, you'll want to fill in these spaces. Kind of hard to do in an X pattern once you get the smaller spaces that you need to fill in. So you'll want to go and do those individually. You can see I got that space filled in, and then I just kind of put hot glue in that open space and then fold the yarn over and pull it up into that open space, and then I'll glue the bottom portion that I folded over. I'll glue that down and make sure it lays flat, and just keep working until you have it all filled in. And it really works well if you have yarn that matches the color of the pumpkin underneath. And now we will start decorating it. So I have these pieces of raffia. I actually got these from one of those like hula skirts. I always pick one up in the summer and keep it for the year so I can use the strands for crafting. And we're just going to make a very simple bow. And I'm using the yarn that we used on the pumpkin to tie around the center of the bow. And then I'll go in with my scissors and fix all those little straggly strands that are poking out there. I'll clean it up a little bit using the scissors to cut those pieces off, and I'll cut the excess ribbon off also. So just trim up those long pieces to help it look a lot neater. Then you can go ahead and fluff it up a little bit if it kind of got squished while you were cutting off the excess pieces and tying it. Just fluff your bow up a little bit there. And then we'll start decorating the pumpkin. So I'm going to put the bow on first. And then I'll use this wood stem. Those come in a pack of like 8 from Dollar Tree. And I had these little leaves left over from last year. So I'll put 2 of the leaves on. And then a few of the berry pieces. These came with a different set of leaves and flowers. And there is our faux sweater pumpkin. Looks a little bit like a sweater. Now for DIY number 2, we're going to make a few more pumpkins. We'll need a sewing needle. We're also going to need some baker's twine or thread. We'll need the polyester fill from Crafter's Square. And then any socks you can find from Dollar Tree that matches your decor. We'll need another little wood piece for a stem, also sold at Dollar Tree. Some more little leaves or berries. And some scissors. And of course, some hot glue. So let's get crafty with our second project. So we're going to make some really simple pumpkins here. We're going to take our sock and cut it at the heel. And you can actually make 2 pumpkins out of 1 sock. So we just cut the heel off. So we've got 2 pieces pretty flat on the top and the bottom. And then I fold it inside out, though that's not really necessary. These look pretty similar inside out or right side. We're going to put our needle and thread through and then just do this very simple in and out pattern at the top, pulling our thread through. And this will help us to bunch up the thread at the top. Once you go all the way around, then all you're going to do is pull that yarn and bunch it up at the top. And then go ahead and tie a knot to hold that closed. And then we'll turn the sock back to the right side. And I'll start to fill with the polyfill. Now these are really stretchy, so you can actually make a pretty big pumpkin with these because they're so stretchy. So it's really up to you how big or how little you want these to be. But I really put a lot of polyfill in mine. And then we will just sew the top closed. We'll bring that yarn through the sock at the top and we'll tie a knot. Make sure it doesn't come out. And then all we'll do is start sewing around the top. Just like we did at the bottom, we're just weaving the needle in and out so that we can pull the yarn and tighten the sock at the top. It'll help bunch it all up once we get the yarn all the way around. You just pull that closed. Now once you have it closed, you can go through with your needle a few times in an X pattern to make sure that it stays closed. So then I take my yarn and I just start wrapping it around the pumpkin and pulling it really tight to create those lines in the pumpkin. And I work in like an X pattern and I just keep going between each piece, and then I will take the needle and poke it through the pumpkin. So as you can see, I just like wrap it around, and then once it's all done, I take my needle to fluff up the polyfill a little bit in case it got smashed. I really want those pieces to, stick out and be, pumpkin-like. And then we'll glue our leaves on and our stem. And I made a few of these. I did a blue one. I also did a gray one out of a tube sock. The gray one here, the same process. I'm just going to decorate the top so you can see what it looks like when it's done. I used some lighter green leaves to decorate the top of this one. I also had a few of these small white flowers that I'm going to attach, and the stem that I'm using is the same. Those white flowers really help brighten it up. And there we have it. We have our 2 mini sock pumpkins, and we'll put those all together in a grouping. That's really wonderful when you don't or you can't find fabric pumpkins that match your decor. You could always just make your own. Then for DIY number 3, we're going to take this little candy dish from the Dollar Tree's party section. We'll need some Mod Podge and a brush. We're also going to need any napkin of your choice. We'll need some paint and paintbrush. And then a small battery operated pillar candle and some raffia. And then we'll need some greenery as well. And a sanding block. We'll need scissors and hot glue. So let's get crafty making project 3 today. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this fall napkin from the Dollar Tree. They brought these back this year, which I was so happy. These are so pretty. What we're going to do is just cut it right up the center, and then we'll separate the 2 sheets. So we just have the one ply, and we will remove this plaid border off of the bottom edge. And we'll actually need 2 pieces to finish this all the way around. So I'm just kind of figuring out my placement right now before I glue it on. And then taking your Mod Podge and a brush, you're going to put a thin layer of Mod Podge on your candy dish. And I went about 2/3 of the way, maybe a little bit more than that. And then we'll lay our napkin down right on top and smooth it. If it's really wrinkly, you really don't have to worry about it. You can always use an iron and some parchment paper and then just go over it with the iron to help smooth out the wrinkles. But I found if you just kind of work slow and work with a little bit of Mod Podge, not too much, and just work really slow, smoothing out the pieces with your hand that you really don't get that many ridges or bumps. We've got our first half done, and then we will need more of the napkin to get all the way around, of course. We've got all this excess here at the top, so what you could do is you could trim off most of it. I find it a little bit easier to just use the sanding block to sand it off, but I did want to glue that very top edge. I wanted the napkin to wrap over that lip at the top, and then I go inside the dish and use my sanding block to remove the rest of the napkin. And I just kind of rub it a little bit and then tear it away, making sure that I still have the napkin on that very top edge. So I'm just being real careful that I don't rip the napkin. And I'd have to start all the way over. So just pull it gently and remove the excess. And then once all that's finished, I'll put the rest of the napkin on so it wraps all the way around. It's okay if you overlap it a little bit. They're layered pumpkins anyway, so it really doesn't matter. As you can see, I have a few wrinkles, so I just went over it with an iron. It was mostly dry at this point. I went over it very lightly with a very, not real hot iron, just a little bit warm, and that helps smooth out any ridges and bumps that I had. So then I chose to go ahead and paint the rest of the candy dish a dark blue. I really like this dark blue. I think it looks nice with the napkin and the orange and blue pumpkins that are on it. And it is a chalk paint, but since we're painting plastic, I ended up doing 2 coats of paint. It just seemed to work better. It's a little bit see-through. So I did the whole bottom, and then we'll do the little stem that the foot is on, and then of course the stand itself. And like I said, you might have to do 2 coats. It really just depends on the brand of paint, how thick it is, and how well it covers. And now we'll take a raffia bow. Just tied a few pieces in a knot. We'll glue that right to the middle and the front. It's using some hot glue. And then I wrap it all the way around and back to the front. Once I bring it back to the front, struggled for a minute there. I just couldn't seem to get it to stay on. Then we'll just tie that in a knot on the front, making sure you have all the pieces through that little loop there. And then I'll just tie that off into a knot. And then we'll trim these pieces down a little bit. You could also turn it into a bow. It's really up to you. So I had some blue raffia as well, so I layered it. I made a bow on top of the tan, but I did not wrap the blue raffia around the container. And now we just have to decorate it. Now that the paint's dry, I have a bunch of this like boxwood greenery from Dollar Tree. And I'll put 2 of those in the center here. And then you can use your battery operated candle. I could not find mine while I was making the craft, so I used a real candle just for sake of the decoration, but you really, or for the pictures, but you really don't want to use a real candle. It would melt, it would catch these plastic, flowers on fire, it would not be good. But for sake of the video and some pictures, we'll use a real candle. If you just want to use it as a decoration and not light the candle, that would be fine. But if you plan on lighting it or want it lit, you definitely want to use the battery operated candles. And here it is all finished. Nice little decor piece. And now for DIY number 4. This is another easy project. We bought one of these home signs from the Dollar Tree. Again, we'll need some paint. Any color that you choose will be fine. We'll need some Mod Podge and a sponge brush. Also some rub-on transfers. And then some foil that you can put on for decoration, or you can use the poster letters you can find over in office supplies. So let's get crafty. So all we're going to do is we're going to first paint our home sign from the Dollar Tree. And I wanted to keep with the theme of the napkin and the pumpkins that we made today. I have this dark blue, and I will paint 3 of the little house shapes with the dark blue. It only took 1 coat, but I could see the white letters through the paint a teeny tiny bit. So I ended up going back over where the letters were. So you could choose to do the whole thing 2 coats, or you can just go over the letter to hide it better. But most of this is going to be hidden anyways with the new letters that we put on top. And like I said, you could use those poster letters, or you could use some Dollar Tree foil or some Dollar Tree glitter vinyl and use that to cut out your letters. And you don't have to have a cutting machine to use the Dollar Tree vinyl. You can definitely cut those with scissors or a razor blade and use them also. So don't feel like if you don't have a cutting machine that you can't use the vinyl. I've showed that several times on this channel, that you definitely can cut it out by hand and use the vinyl. So we'll let these dry. Once they're dry, I took a bunch of the rub-on transfers and just kind of place them all over. They look like falling leaves. I love that they brought these rub-on transfers back this year. They're one of my favorite things to use for crafting. I love using rub-on transfers. I think they always add a really fun highlight to the different craft projects. So I'll add some larger leaves to some of the sides. And just because you have a large rub-on transfer doesn't mean you have to put the whole thing on in one piece. You can just put a few pieces like I'm doing here on the corners and add a little bit to make it like the leaves are coming up at an angle, and then just keep adding more as you go. And then you can use your poster letters or your vinyl letters and add the word fall to your house. And then the Mod Podge, which is self-explanatory, you can seal this with the Mod Podge once you have everything on and the paint is dry. And that's it. Very simple, so easy. It took about 10 minutes other than waiting for the paint to dry. I hope you guys enjoyed the craft projects that we made today, all of our little ideas for fall, our cloth pumpkins, and the ways you can decorate. They've got those metal pails from Dollar Tree, those $5 layered trays. Those are fun to use to decorate with. You can add these pumpkins to, and just some new ideas. Try to give you some ideas of how you can decorate your home for fall on a budget. These are all the different ways you can decorate with the tiered tray, are all on one level. I hope you guys enjoyed today's crafts. Thank you guys so very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And here are some other videos from our channel that you might also enjoy. I hope you all have a lovely day, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.